Welcome to the Whiskey Explorer. Thanks so much for tuning in for this episode, guys. I would just like to take this opportunity right now just to thank all of the new subscribers and the new viewers to the channel. Had such a great time shooting the best whiskeys of 2022. Of course, those were just my thoughts on it and my top 5 whiskeys that I enjoyed that I would probably repeat purchase. So tonight, guys, I have got the difficult task of narrowing down those 5 whiskeys to the top one, the top dog, the king of the whiskeys. And I am actually going to crown that #1 whiskey with the fanciest trophy in the business. We've got none other than the Golden Barrel Award. We're going to hand it out tonight for my top whiskey of 2022. Alright guys, so if you didn't have a chance to do so already, if you did want to check out my top 5 whiskeys of 2022, I will put a link up here to that video. And in that video, there are also links to each of the individual bottles that I chose for my top 5 whiskeys of the year. Alright, so what I'm going to do is something a little bit different tonight, something that's different for the channel. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go through my top 5 choices, and one at a time I'm going to eliminate a bottle, and we will be left with the winner of the competition for the top whiskey of 2022. Of course, in my own humble opinion. And again, guys, it is regional to where I am here in Victoria, BC, Canada. So if I didn't choose something that was fantastic that's on your list, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what that whiskey is for you, what you'd choose for your top whiskey of 2022. All right, guys, so in thinking about shooting this video, I thought, okay, this is a bit of the desert island or gun to your head scenario. So gun to your head, you only had one bourbon from this year that you could drink, or one whiskey, or one scotch, or one rye, or one Canadian whiskey, whatever it might be. Or for example, you're stranded on a desert island and you can only take with you your top whiskey of 2022. All right, so let's go through this process of elimination, and I will just touch very briefly on the bottles that I eliminate as we go through them. All right, so sadly, my first bottle to go is going to be the Sagamore Spirit Double Oak Rye. Now, I do want to also bring this up that, of course, all of these whiskeys are fantastic whiskeys, or they wouldn't have made my list for my top 5 whiskeys of 2022. These were just, I'll give you guys the reasoning behind it, but there's just a reason that it maybe didn't take that #1 spot this year. And I just want to briefly go over that with you guys. All right, so the Sagamore Spirit Double Oak Rye, it is bottled at, let me remind myself here, 48.3% ABV. All right, so very nice proof point for this rye. It's a very expressive rye. It has lots of rye notes, some dill, some spearmint, definite rye grain presence, spiciness, body, kind of everything you want. A little bit of sweet vanilla in there as well. A very, very solid rye whiskey. Now, it didn't make my top of the list because for me, this is actually very expressive in the area of wood. So there is a lot of wood that comes through on this rye. And I will say that that sort of presented itself, especially in the finish, as a bit of a dry kind of cedar note that did have quite a bit of wood tannins in it. And if that's your jam, then you definitely need to check out that rye whiskey because it's very expressive and very heavy on the wood notes. So that is my kind of reasoning why it didn't make the top of the cut. I'm not going to go too much into value for these whiskeys or price point because in my top 5, I didn't have that as sort of part of the parameters. So I'm not going to kind of go into that, but it was also a $100 bottle. So, with tax here in BC, that's $115 out the door. So it's a bit much for that whiskey in my opinion. But again, in the States, you can find it for 50 or 60 bucks on the shelf, US dollars, of course, but it's definitely a very good rye whiskey. Excellent stuff. Really enjoyed it, but just didn't quite make #1 this year. All right, so what is next? Okay, so next, so just to recap, we've got, that was the Sagamore Spirit Double Oak Rye. We've got the Glenallachie 12. We've got the Calumet Farm 15-year-old. We've got the Michter's Special Release Toasted Barrel Finish Bourbon. And we've got the Highland Park Cask Strength. And I've got to eliminate one more of these right now. So for me, this may come as a surprise to some, but I'm going to have to eliminate, surprisingly, the Highland Park Cask Strength. All right, and we need to find out why. All right, so this is a hitter of a single malt scotch. It is bottled at 63.3% alcohol by volume, so you get a ton of expressive flavor here, ton of vanilla, butterscotch caramel, that very nice subtle kind of heather peat note that you get from Highland Park whiskey. So floral component here, some nice orchard fruits as well. It's just a fantastic whiskey. But here's the but, and you knew it was coming. This is a non-age stated whiskey, and I think in this case, Highland Park is using the advantage of the cask strength to hide a little bit of the youth of the whiskey. So I'm gonna guess, and I don't know offhand, I don't know what the actual stat is here, no one really does because it's a non-age stated whiskey, but I'm going to guess that the alcohol by volume masks a little bit of that youth, and that we're coming in with about a, if I had to guess, 8 to 10-year-old whiskey at the most. So I think it could even be a little bit younger than that as well, and maybe mixed in with some older whiskeys. Being that it's a single malt and it's from the same distillery, they can actually play with that a little bit and still call it a single malt. So we don't know the age of that one, and I do think there are some youthful notes there. There is a bit of a bitey grain note that does come forward. The ethanol is quite strong in it, and it does kind of have a youthful presence, just a bit. I would also say, if I'm going to complain, and you know, we all love to complain about whiskey and scotch, but if I did have another complaint, it's that it is very, very sweet. So if you like a desserty type of whiskey, you're going to gravitate towards that Highland Park cask strength. You're going to love it. But if you like a little bit kind of more complexity and layers and something a little bit more dry and, you know, maybe not quite as sweet, then I don't know that that one's for you. All right, so that is 2 eliminated right off the bat. Okay, so now we have got the Michter's Toasted Barrel, we've got the Calumet 15, and the Glenallachie 12. So I've got to eliminate another one right now. All right, so I'm going to eliminate this one, and this is going to surprise some people, but it is what it is. This is a highly allocated, very difficult to find whiskey. Not everyone can find it on the shelf, so I almost didn't put it in my top 5. But I do know that other whiskey tubers and whiskey fans that I'm, you know, in contact with on Instagram, they do end up finding the Michter's Toasted Barrel finished bourbon, but it's very, very difficult to find this. So I'm going to take it off the list. I'm going to remove it from the competition right now just because of the difficulty in finding it. And then there's also the markup. Oh, we all hate that, right? So you go into a liquor store, you're in a private run state or a private run province, and they've jacked the Michter's Toasted Barrel up to $200, $300, and people will still buy it for that. All right, so that takes care of the Michter's Toasted. I did kind of just put this in as a placeholder. I was lucky enough to get a hold of a bottle of the Toasted Sour Mash, which is Michter's special release for 2022. So I picked that up. So that was a bit of a placeholder there. So we'll also get rid of that one. But I'm looking forward to cracking this one in the new year, trying it with you guys on the channel, and giving my thoughts. So this one here is a little bit different. It's bottled at 43%. And I think that's the only thing that really hurts this release. I've tried the 2019 version. It was fantastic, but I did feel like the proof was too low for that type of release and that type of price point. So the Michter's Toasted, to give you guys an idea, the Toasted Barrel Bourbon was 140 Canadian, but that Toasted Sour Mash has already gone up by $10, so it was 150 this year, and you guys know the drill. It's like, if you want that bottle, that's what it's going to be, and that was the Canadian MSRP here in BC. All right, so now there were 2. Or now there are 2. So we've got the Calumet 15-year single rack black. That one's a mouthful. At 105 proof and 52.5% alcohol by volume. 15-year-old, thought to be sourced from Barton Distillery, 1792. And then we've got the Glenallachie 12, which is a fantastic 12-year-old, 46% non-chill filtered, no color added, from the esteemed Billy Walker, a master distiller. So this is a tough call, but I think you guys know where I'm going to go with this, right? It's kind of like, I may have kind of hinted at this when I reviewed this particular bottle. But before I do that, guys, 3 quick favors, please. If you could hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, please leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you could go to a desert island, if you had to go to a desert island, a nice tropical one, but you could only take one whiskey with you from 2022, what would that whiskey be? I really want to know, because I want to try your top whiskey. I love this community. I love kind of going back and forth with people on it. So I'd love to know what is exciting for you guys in 2022. All right, cheers everyone. Before we get to the reveal for Whiskey of the Year for 2022 for the Whiskey Explorer. Cheers. Thanks so much to all of you, and very happy New Year to you guys. All the best to you and your families and loved ones. Cheers. Wow. Okay. That is fantastic. And I think, without further ado, I've built the suspense sufficiently. I'm going to have to eliminate the Glenallachie 12. It's still a very highly available, excellent whiskey, especially for the price point I paid, which was about 65 Canadian. So, fantastic stuff, but the winner chicken dinner, you guessed it, is the Calumet Farms 15-year-old single rack black. It is a 15-year-old whiskey expression, thought to be sourced from 1792 Barton Distillery. It is just a fantastic, it's not quite barrel strength, so we're at 52.5% or 105 proof, so very respectable proof point. Awesome age statement, 15 years old. Tons of richness and flavor to this. So this is what I've got in the glass here. I'm going to go in for another sip, guys, and I'll give you some quick notes. Cheers. A very, very, very expressive and complex bourbon. You can actually feel that proof right away, that 105 proof, that 52.5%. It hits you right off the gate. So there's no delay in the flavor here. It's immediate. You get kind of smashed with like a flavor explosion. It's very much that deep, dark cherry that we all love in bourbon. That's forefront, but that's quickly mixed in with some nice, beautiful kind of vanilla flavors, and then an immediate spice. It's like cinnamon spice, nutmeg, clove, those baking spices, maybe a hint of like cracked black pepper because it is very spicy through the mid to late to finish. A long-lasting finish. You could sip this bourbon, you could literally pour an ounce or an ounce and a half of this and sip it for like a good half hour because you could enjoy the nosing of this bourbon, the experience on the palate, and that super long-lasting finish. So this is mouth coating, it's viscous, full-bodied. The middle to end of the palate, you start to get a real deep, like aged oak note. So it's sweet to start, but then that gives way to a little bit of drying tannins. Just fantastic stuff. I've heard the 16-year-old is even better, but unfortunately never came to our market. This 15 didn't either. I had to get this from the States through a friend, but nonetheless, that's my whiskey of the year for 2022. So let's just crown this champion right here. I've got this nice pimp chain for it. There we go. It's the, let's call it the brass barrel. There you go. So the brass barrel award for 2022 goes to the Calumet Farm 15-year-old single rack black. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. I hope you enjoyed that quick rundown and that episode. If you have a different whiskey of the year, please let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Check out the other videos on the channel, and we'll see you guys in the new year. All the best. And until next time, guys, may your sails be full and your drowns be fuller. Cheers.